Have you ever wondered if true love can blossom from the most barren seeds, from an unromantic beginning, or even from a twist of fate? Life, at times, takes unexpected turns, leading us to shores we never imagined, where happiness and belonging awaits, not in the way we pictured, but in a deeper, more authentic sense. The story I am about to tell you is about the journey of such a woman, a journey from despair and loneliness to a profound, sincere love, proving that the human heart can find light even in the darkest corners. Her name was Eleanor. Eleanor was an artist, but the title artist at that time was merely a luxurious dream for her, a burning passion, suppressed by the harsh realities of life. She lived in a cramped, dilapidated, rented room where sunlight rarely visited. Each day, Eleanor struggled with every meal, every rent payment, every brushstroke she hoped would bring a small change to her life. But reality was cruel. Eleanor's paintings, though filled with passion and emotion, lay untouched in the corner of her room, unnoticed by anyone. Loneliness was Eleanor's constant companion. It wasn't just the absence of someone by her side, but also the feeling of being abandoned, forgotten in a vast city where everyone rushed through their own lives. Eleanor yearned for a home, a safe haven to lean on, to not have to fight life's hardships alone. But that dream seemed too distant for a poor girl like her, without family or support. One rainy afternoon, as Eleanor sat huddled in her cold room, staring out the window with vacant eyes, an unexpected proposal arrived, knocking on the door of her life. It was a marriage proposal from Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies was considerably older than Eleanor, a successful man with a calm demeanor and a stable life. Eleanor knew him through a mutual acquaintance, having only met a few times in brief social encounters. His proposal was far from romantic. There were no roses or sweet words. It was more like a practical proposition, a solution for both parties. Mr. Davies needed a companion to share his later years, to fill the emptiness of his large house. As for Eleanor, she needed an escape. At that moment, Eleanor's heart felt no stir. There was no love, no passion, only an emptiness and a carefully concealed despair. Eleanor considered it deeply. She knew that accepting this proposal meant giving up her dream of romantic love, of a man her own age, with shared aspirations. But in return she would have a home, a life free from the worries of daily bread. She would no longer have to endure the coldness of her rented room, nor face the landlord's scrutinizing gaze when rent was due. "Eleanor, you don't need to rush your answer," Mr. Davies said, his voice deep and gentle. "Think it over carefully. I don't want you to have any regrets." But Eleanor didn't think for too long. The fear of poverty and loneliness outweighed any romantic desires. She looked into Mr. Davies' sincere eyes, seeing no coercion or lust, only a quiet calm and perhaps a hint of loneliness similar to her own. She nodded. It was a decision of reason, of survival, not of a loving heart. Eleanor and Mr. Davies' marriage took place quietly, without fanfare or rust. There was no lavish wedding, just a small, intimate ceremony with a few close relatives. Eleanor stepped into Mr. Davies' house, a spacious, clean, and tidy home, yet still imbued with a sense of emptiness. She felt like a stranger, a lodger in her own life. The first days of their marriage passed in silence and reserve. Eleanor lived in her own world, and so did Mr. Davies. They shared a home, but each maintained their own space, both physically and mentally. Eleanor spent most of her time in her art studio, a room Mr. Davies had prepared specifically for her, complete with all the necessary tools and natural light. She painted ceaselessly as a way to release the emotions bottled within her, to forget the truth that this marriage had not begun with love. Mr. Davies was a man of few words, but the way he treated Eleanor spoke volumes. He was always kind, always respectful. He never forced Eleanor to do anything she didn't want to. He gave her the freedom and personal space she secretly longed for. Every morning, Mr. Davies would prepare a simple yet nutritious breakfast for Eleanor, then quietly leave for work. Every evening, he would ask Eleanor about her day, not out of excessive curiosity, but with a gentle, caring inquiry. Eleanor still remembered the first evening she shared a meal with Mr. Davies. The atmosphere was awkward. Eleanor simply focused on eating, trying to avoid his gaze. But Mr. Davies didn't put any pressure on her. He simply gently served her food, occasionally telling a small story about his work or his garden. The stories were nothing extraordinary, but they brought a strange sense of peace. Eleanor had never felt such peace in her life. Gradually, Eleanor began to feel a small warmth seep into her heart. It wasn't the fiery passion of romantic love, but the warmth of safety, of being cared for. Mr. Davies' house was no longer just a lodging, but slowly became a home. She no longer had to worry about being thrown out onto the streets or living in scarcity. She had a space to create, to pursue her passion without pressure. Mr. Davies' kindness was not flashy, but quiet and steadfast. He always remembered the little things Eleanor liked, or when she wasn't feeling well. He didn't say much, but his actions were always meaningful. Once, when Eleanor was slightly ill, Mr. Davies stayed up all night to play school compresses on her, and the next morning he personally cooked porridge and brought it to her room. Lying in bed, Eleanor looked at Mr. Davies with his silver-streaked hair and worried face, and suddenly felt a strange sensation rise within her, a feeling she had never thought she would receive from a man she hadn't married for love. It was the beginning of something new, a tiny seed sprouting in the soil of her soul. Eleanor began to realize that, even without grand vows or romantic gestures, Mr. Davies had given her a gift more precious than anything: peace, respect, and a true home. And it was in that very peace that a new door slowly opened, leading her on a journey to discover things she had never dared to believe could exist in her life. And it was in that very peace that a new door slowly opened, leading her on a journey to discover things she had never dared to believe could exist in her life. In the days that followed, Eleanor's life in Mr. Davies' house subtly but profoundly changed. The awkward, silent meals were replaced by gentle, more natural conversations. At first, Eleanor would only give Mr. Davies curt answers, but gradually she began to share more proactively. Mr. Davies never asked about her difficult past, but he always listened to everything she said about her drawings, her dreams, or simply her fleeting thoughts about a day gone by. His gaze was always patient and full of understanding, making Eleanor feel seen and completely respected. Mr. Davies had a small library filled with many old books, from classic literature to history and philosophy. Eleanor, with her artistic soul, was often drawn to books with beautiful illustrations or stories about famous painters. Mr. Davies noticed this and often selected books he thought Eleanor would enjoy, placing them on her desk. Sometimes he would simply sit and read the newspaper in the living room while Eleanor was engrossed in painting in her studio. But his presence, the quietude he brought, became an indispensable part of her daily rhythm. It was within this safe and supportive space that Eleanor's artistic talent seemed to grow wings. She no longer had to paint merely to sell for money, to survive. She began to paint with her whole heart, with all the emotions stirring within her. Her paintings were no longer just dark hues, but gradually became more vibrant, full of hope and vitality. Mr. Davies was the first to see these works, and he always offered her sincere praise, unpretentious yet deeply meaningful. He was not an art critic, but the admiration in his eyes gave Eleanor immense strength. Their relationship was not a fiery romantic love story like in novels, but a quiet, underground stream, nourishing Eleanor's parched soul. She began to care for Mr. Davies more. She remembered the dishes he liked, his small habits. Every morning, she would often wake up a little earlier to prepare a proper breakfast for him, or tend to the small garden he cherished. These actions were not obligations, but voluntary, a way for Eleanor to express her gratitude and a certain feeling that was slowly forming within her, a feeling she couldn't yet name. However, life was not always as serene as a painting. Although Eleanor had found peace, gossip from the outside still managed to seep into her life. People whispered that she, a beautiful young woman, had agreed to marry an older, wealthy man like Mr. Davies, surely for money. The scrutinizing glances, the veiled remarks from neighbors, from a few old acquaintances, made Eleanor face an invisible pressure. She felt ashamed, sometimes angry, and at times doubt crept into her mind. Were those people right? Was she truly staying here only for money? One evening, Eleanor could no longer hold it in. She sat at the dining table, the food seeming tasteless. Mr. Davies noticed the unease in her eyes. He gently asked, "Eleanor, is something wrong? You don't look happy." Eleanor hesitated, then finally burst into tears. She told Mr. Davies about the gossip, about her fear of being judged, of being looked down upon. She said through her tears, "They say I married you for money, to change my life. I'm afraid you might think so too." Mr. Davies listened in silence. He didn't interrupt her, simply placed his hand gently on hers, a simple yet warm gesture. When Eleanor had finished speaking, he looked at her with a steady gaze, devoid of judgment. "Eleanor," he said, his voice calm and full of understanding, "we cannot control what outsiders say. The most important thing is the truth between us, what you and I know about each other. I never thought you married me for money. I know what kind of person you are, and I trust you." Mr. Davies' words were like a balm, soothing Eleanor's turbulent soul. She looked up at him, seeing in his eyes not suspicion, but absolute trust. In that moment, Eleanor realized that she was no longer staying in this house for her initial reasons. She was no longer just trying to escape poverty or seeking a safe haven. She was staying because she wanted to stay. She wanted to be by the side of this man who had brought her peace, respect, and a genuine affection she had never dared to dream of. The moment of that realization struck Eleanor like a lightning bolt. She had spent too much time running, merely existing, forgetting that happiness is not a destination, but a journey. And on that journey, she had found a life partner, a kindred spirit, someone who had seen her true worth, even when she felt most insecure. Love doesn't always begin with grand vows or romantic dates. Sometimes it blossoms from quiet kindness, from sincere care, from the simple moments of life. Eleanor realized that, although the beginning of this marriage had been devoid of love, love had grown steadily in every gesture, every word, every look from Mr. Davies. And now it had become a warm, burning flame in her heart, a flame she had never thought she would possess. She looked at Mr. Davies, the man with silver-streaked hair and a gentle smile, who had patiently waited for her, who had loved her in his own way. A powerful urge rose within Eleanor, a longing to express everything she was feeling. She wanted to tell him that she loved him, loved his kindness, his composure, his sincerity. She wanted to tell him that she was no longer staying for money, but because she loved him, loved this house, loved the life they were building together. But those words seemed to remain caught in her throat. She needed a little more courage, a little more time to sort through the emotions swirling within her. She knew that a new chapter in her life had truly begun, a chapter full of promise for a genuine love, a love that had grown from the most unexpected beginnings. The moment of that realization struck Eleanor like a lightning bolt. She had spent too much time running, merely existing, forgetting that happiness is not a destination, but a journey. And on that journey, she had found a life partner, a kindred spirit, someone who had seen her true worth, even when she felt most insecure. Love doesn't always begin with grand vows or romantic dates. Sometimes it blossoms from quiet kindness, from sincere care, from the simple moments of life. Eleanor realized that, although the beginning of this marriage had been devoid of love, love had grown steadily in every gesture, every word, every look from Mr. Davies. And now it had become a warm, burning flame in her heart, a flame she had never thought she would possess. She looked at Mr. Davies, the man with silver-streaked hair and a gentle smile, who had patiently waited for her, who had loved her in his own way. A powerful urge rose within Eleanor, a longing to express everything she was feeling. She wanted to tell him that she loved him, loved his kindness, his composure, his sincerity. She wanted to tell him that she was no longer staying for money, but because she loved him, loved this house, loved the life they were building together. But those words seemed to remain caught in her throat. She needed a little more courage, a little more time to sort through the emotions swirling within her. She knew that a new chapter in her life had truly begun, a chapter full of promise for a genuine love, a love that had grown from the most unexpected beginnings. For several days after, Eleanor remained restless. Every time Mr. Davies smiled gently at her, every time he placed a warm cup of tea on her drawing table as she worked diligently, every time he recounted old memories with sparkling eyes, Eleanor's heart would stir. She couldn't keep these feelings hidden any longer. It was like a river wanting to overflow its banks, a melody yearning to be sung. One evening, as they both sat by the fireplace, the flickering firelight danced on the walls, casting long, cozy shadows. Mr. Davies was reading, occasionally glancing at Eleanor, who sat quietly gazing into the flames. The atmosphere was silent, yet not heavy, but filled with peace. Eleanor took a deep breath. "Mr. Davies," she began, her voice slightly trembling. Mr. Davies lowered his book, turning to look at her with eyes full of concern. "What is it, Eleanor?" She hesitated, her hands clasped tightly together. I have something to tell you." Mr. Davies smiled gently, an encouraging smile. "Go on, my dear, I'm always listening." The gentleness in his voice was like a calming balm, helping Eleanor regain some composure. She looked directly into his eyes etched with the crow's feet of time, yet full of warmth and understanding. "I know, our beginning wasn't like the love stories people usually tell," Eleanor began, her voice growing clearer as she found her confidence. "I came here because I was poor, because I needed a refuge. And you accepted me, gave me a home, a life I had never dared to dream of." Mr. Davies simply listened in silence, his gaze never leaving her. "I once thought this was just an arrangement, an exchange," Eleanor continued, her words unburdening her heart. "I was afraid, I was doubtful. I heard the gossip that I only married you for money, to escape poverty." A flicker of sadness crossed Eleanor's face, but she quickly brushed it away. But you changed everything. You treated me with a kindness, a respect I had never received. You gave me space to be myself, to draw, to dream. You gave me the safety, the peace I had longed for." Tears began to well in Eleanor's eyes, but they were not tears of weakness, but of release, of happiness. "I used to fear that I would never find true love. But now I realize love isn't always loud, it isn't always dazzling from the start. Sometimes it blossoms from quiet care, from late-night conversations, from simple, cozy meals." She gently touched Mr. Davies' hand. His palm was warm and steady. "I realize that I'm no longer staying here for money or for safety. I'm staying here because I want to. I want to be by your side. Mr. Davies, I want to take care of you, to share my life with you. I love you." The last words escaped Eleanor's lips like a sigh of relief, like a 1,000-pound weight lifted. She looked at Mr. Davies, her heart pounding, awaiting his reaction. Mr. Davies' face, usually composed, now showed surprise, then slowly transformed into a radiant smile. A smile Eleanor had never seen from him, a smile carrying all his joy and relief. He gently squeezed her hand. "Eleanor," he said, his voice slightly hoarse with emotion. I've been waiting for these words for a very long time." Eleanor looked at him in surprise. Mr. Davies continued, his eyes sparkling. "I knew you came to me because of your circumstances. I also knew your heart needed time to open. I never expected you to love me immediately. I only hoped to bring you peace, respect, and a true home. I believe that true love blossoms from kindness and understanding." He gently stroked her hair. "I love you too, Eleanor. I love your innocence, your talent, and the strength hidden deep within your fragile exterior. I've loved you for a very long time, from the very first day you stepped into this house, bringing with you both shyness and an indescribable sadness. Hot tears streamed down Eleanor's cheeks. She hugged Mr. Davies tightly, a fierce embrace, as if to make up for all the distant days, all the days of doubt. In his warm embrace, she felt she truly belonged here, belonged to this man. From that moment, their relationship turned a new page. True, deep love had truly blossomed. No longer just silent gestures, but words, touches, and glances exchanged with tenderness. They were no longer two lonely individuals sharing a home, but two souls who had found each other, intertwined. Eleanor no longer cared about the gossip outside. She understood that the truth between her and Mr. Davies was what mattered most. Their love had proven that the value of a relationship lies not in how it begins, but in how it is nurtured and grows. They walked together in the garden, watched sunsets together, shared stories and dreams. Eleanor continued to draw, but now her paintings were filled with the light and colors of happiness. Mr. Davies was not just her husband, but also her life partner, her kindred spirit, the one who had saved her soul from loneliness and despair. The arranged marriage, initially seeming only a solution to a difficult life, had become a miraculous journey leading to true love. Eleanor and Mr. Davies had proven that love can blossom from the most unexpected beginnings, from quiet kindness, from patience and understanding. It didn't need grand, flashy vows, but only a sincere heart that knew how to love and cherish. And in that cozy little house, under this soft yellow light, laughter and love stories still echoed, a vivid testament that true happiness is always found where one least expects it, and love has the power to transform seemingly hopeless beginnings into a sweet, fulfilling end. They had found salvation and belonging with each other, not through the arrangement of fate, but through the choice of their hearts.